What kind of country prepares for war with the world's most powerful military without trying to match it plane for plane, ship for ship, or tank for tank? That is the question at the heart of Iran's defense doctrine. And the answer is far more complex and far more dangerous than many Americans realize. Because if Washington ever had to confront Tehran directly, the battlefield would not begin with a simple clash of armies. It would begin with missiles launched in waves, drones filling the sky, proxy forces igniting multiple fronts, cyber disruptions, and the constant threat of chaos in one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth. Iran does not need to defeat the United States in a conventional sense. Its real objective is to make any conflict so costly, so unpredictable, and so politically explosive that stronger enemies hesitate before pushing further. Analysts have long described Tehran's approach as a deterrence by punishment and denial model built around missiles, drones, proxy partners, maritime disruption, and asymmetric tools, rather than classic force-on-force warfare. And that is exactly why this subject matters for Americans. If you care about national security, military strategy, and the hard reality of how rivals try to blunt US power, hit like and subscribe to American History Animated. On this channel, we do not just revisit the past, we break down the ideas, doctrines, and decisions that still shape America's place in the world. And today, we are diving into 5 Iranian defense strategies designed to withstand, deter, or complicate a US threat. Before we begin, here is the big question I want you thinking about. Is Iran's strategy mainly about self-defense and survival, or is it about building enough leverage to threaten the region while avoiding direct war? Keep that question in mind, because by the middle of this video, I want to know what you think. Iran's first major strategy is simple in concept, but terrifying in execution: overwhelm the enemy. Tehran has invested heavily in ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and a large drone arsenal because those systems are cheaper, more flexible, and more survivable than trying to build an air force that could compete with the United States. US and independent analysts have repeatedly noted that Iran sees missiles as a core pillar of deterrence and retaliation, especially because its conventional air power has long lagged behind that of major Western militaries. In practice, that means Iran can threaten bases, cities, energy infrastructure, and regional military positions with salvos designed not just to hit targets, but to complicate interception and exhaust defenses. What makes this especially important is not just the number of systems, but the logic behind them. A stronger military can intercept some incoming threats. It can even intercept many, but the defending side pays a price every time it has to respond. Iran's missile and drone doctrine exploits that reality. It aims to force opponents into high-cost defensive reactions, create uncertainty, and demonstrate that even a militarily superior enemy cannot assume a clean, low-risk operation. That is one reason Iranian strikes and strike demonstrations are often read not only as attacks, but as signaling events, proof that Tehran can still impose consequences if cornered. Iran's second strategy is one of the most famous and one of the most misunderstood. Instead of fighting alone, it extends its reach through allied militias and partner groups across the region. This network has included armed actors in places such as Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, allowing Tehran to pressure adversaries indirectly, create multiple theaters of tension, and respond without always engaging in a full state-to-state confrontation. US intelligence assessments and policy analyses have consistently described this network as central to how Iran projects influence while reducing its own exposure to direct retaliation. From Iran's perspective, this model has several advantages. It creates strategic depth. It complicates attribution. It gives Tehran options below the threshold of conventional war, and it can stretch the attention of American planners across multiple fronts at once. If pressure rises in one theater, another front can flare up. If direct retaliation looks too risky, a partner force can carry part of the burden. That does not mean Iran controls every move of every allied actor with perfect precision, but it does mean the United States must think beyond Iran's borders whenever tensions rise. Tehran's defense posture is therefore not limited to its own territory. It is embedded in a wider regional architecture of influence, pressure, and deterrence. Strategy number 3. Threatening the Strait of Hormuz and regional shipping. Iran's third strategy focuses on geography, and geography is power. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most important energy choke points, and Iranian planners know that any major conflict with the United States would immediately raise the question of maritime access. Defense Intelligence Agency assessments have long pointed to Iran's efforts to control avenues of approach, especially around the Strait of Hormuz, through mines, anti-ship cruise missiles, submarines, small fast attack craft, and other anti-access tools. CSIS and CFR analyses have likewise highlighted Iran's ability to threaten shipping, energy flows, and maritime movement in ways that can send economic shockwaves far beyond the Gulf. This matters because Tehran does not need permanent naval supremacy to create real strategic pain. It only needs to raise the risk enough to shake markets, unsettle allies, and force US decision-makers to think about escalation in global terms, not just military ones. A confrontation in the Gulf is never only about ships. It is about oil prices, insurance costs, commercial shipping routes, and international pressure. That is why Iran's maritime posture functions as both a military and political weapon. It tells adversaries that even limited strikes could trigger wider economic consequences. In deterrence terms, that is extremely valuable. So here is the question I want you to answer in the comments. If you were advising an American president, which Iranian strategy would concern you most? The missile barrages, the proxy network, or the threat to the Strait of Hormuz? I want your honest answer, because this is where military theory becomes real-world policy. Iran's fourth strategy is built around one brutal truth of modern warfare. If you know a stronger enemy may strike first, you must make yourself hard to kill in the opening blow. That is why Iran has spent years dispersing assets, hardening sites, and building underground facilities tied to missiles and other strategic programs. DIA reporting has described Iran as maintaining extensive underground missile infrastructure, including hardened sites and launch-related facilities, while more recent analysis has continued to note the importance of deeply buried and fortified locations in Iran's defensive architecture. The purpose of this strategy is not merely to hide equipment, it is to preserve retaliation. If key assets survive, then deterrence survives. If deterrence survives, then Iran remains dangerous even after being hit. That changes an opponent's calculations before the first shot is ever fired. Underground basing, dispersed launch capacity, hardened production, and concealed storage all serve the same broader goal: deny the enemy the fantasy of a quick, surgical, low-cost success. And in strategic terms, that may be one of the most important Iranian advantages of all. Not superiority, but survivability. Iran's fifth strategy may be the hardest to measure because it operates in the gray zone between peace and war. Tehran has often relied on cyber operations, deniable actions, calibrated retaliation, and indirect pressure, rather than always choosing open confrontation. CSIS has argued that cyberspace is a key domain for Iranian response because Iran lacks equal conventional options against the United States and instead leans on asymmetric tools and dispersed actors. Other analyses have similarly characterized Iran's military approach as one designed to operate between open war and open peace, imposing pressure without always crossing the clearest red lines. That gives Iran flexibility. A cyber attack can disrupt without looking like a bombing campaign. A proxy strike can raise costs without formally triggering the same response as a declared state attack. A deniable act at sea, through militias or through infrastructure disruption, can create confusion, delay decision-making, and complicate coalition unity. This style of warfare is frustrating by design. It aims to keep stronger powers off balance, make escalation thresholds harder to define, and ensure that every American response must consider second-order consequences. For Tehran, ambiguity is not a weakness, it is a shield. When you put all 5 strategies together, a clear picture emerges. Iran's defense doctrine is not based on defeating the United States in a traditional war. It is based on deterring, complicating, surviving, and retaliating. Missiles and drones can saturate defenses. Proxies can widen the battlefield. Maritime disruption can threaten the global economy. Underground fortification can preserve second strike capability. And cyber and gray zone tactics can blur the line between pressure and war. That combination is exactly why Iran remains such a difficult strategic problem for Washington and its allies. Analysts and US assessments consistently describe Tehran as seeking to minimize the risk of direct full-scale war while still preserving tools that can threaten US interests, allies, and regional stability. For Americans, the lesson is bigger than Iran itself. Great powers are not challenged only by armies that look like their own. They are challenged by states that study their strengths, search for their limits, and build strategies designed to raise the price of intervention. That is why understanding an adversary's doctrine is not weakness, it is part of strategic seriousness. And for a country like the United States, one with global responsibilities, global allies, and global interests, strategic seriousness is part of national strength. So if this video made you think more deeply about how rivals try to blunt American power, like this video and subscribe to American History Animated. If you believe informed citizens make a stronger republic, and that understanding hard history and hard strategy is part of protecting America's future, then this channel is for you. And before you go, leave your final answer in the comments. Which of these 5 Iranian strategies is the most effective, and do you think it is meant mainly to prevent war or to give Tehran leverage while staying below the threshold of direct conflict? That answer says a lot about how you see deterrence, power, and America's role in the world.